रिकॉर्डिंग चालू कर दो चालू। हाँ बस कोई बात नहीं, बस अगर फिक्स कर दीजिए। हैं? हाँ हाँ संजय सामने आपको बैठा लाइट में बनाई थे, बहुत लाइट नहीं, बंदा देखा है 4-5 लोगों को। कर दिया चार। हाँ कर दिया। हाँ हाँ कर हो गया। हाँ मतलब हाँ कर सकते, रिकॉर्ड भी कर। यार 1 में ना, हाँ वही करना क्लासेस है। हाँ वो तो मैंने किया उनके प्रोफेशनल क्लासेस। तो जाओ ना मनीष, एक काम कर लेकर तो क्या स्विचिंग हो गई थी, भी मोबाइल कैमरा दिखाओ ना, दिखाओ कैमरा। CR1 में तो कोई क्लास चल रहा है, वहाँ पे बोल रहे हैं यहाँ पे तो शूटिंग नहीं करना है। CR2 में जाके नहीं, CR2 में नहीं गए ना, और महेश है वहाँ पे नहीं है ना, CR2 होगा, महेश है वहाँ पे जो कैमरा वहाँ से ले लो।
A very good afternoon to everyone, and welcome to today's learning table discussion. My name is Arya, and I'll be anchoring this ceremony for today. Today's discussion is on the theme of learning from the future, leveraging technology for business value creation and appropriation. I would now like to introduce our accomplished moderator and panelists. Moderating today's session is Professor Rajendra Srivastava, Executive Director of the ISB Center for Business Innovation. With over 45 years of experience, Professor Srivastava is an expert on analytics, data science, and business innovation. Joining him are our distinguished panelists. Mr. Syed Tawseef Abbas is the Principal Advisor at the Telecom Regulatory Authority of India. With extensive policy and regulatory experience, he provides key insights on navigating India's telecom landscape. Dr. Bhaskar Das is a Professor of Practice and Medical Trust. He also sits with MICA's Governing Council. His perspectives on leveraging tech innovation are invaluable. Ms. Anushri Ghosh is the Head of Digital Transformation and Commerce at ICMC, which is one of India's largest and most diversified conglomerates. She brings over 2 decades of experience driving large-scale digital transformation and e-commerce initiatives across ITC's businesses. Mr. Kaushal Shah is the Chief Financial Officer at Crest Specialty Restaurants. He is a seasoned finance professional with over 25 years of experience in corporate finance, strategy, and technology across various domains. Our panelists will have the following flow. Our moderator will start with a 25-minute presentation on the topic, followed by 5-minute inputs per each speaker, after which the floor will be open to questions from the audience. I'm sure this is going to be a very invigorating discussion. I would request the audience to keep noting their thoughts and questions, as the floor will, of course, be open to questions later. And I will now hand over the dais to Professor Srivastava to get started the session.
Thank you. In case you're wondering why I'm trying to avoid my colleagues, it's the wonder of technology over the process here. One of my very good friends, Vinita Bali, who is the Chief Executive of the bank, he once made the statement to me, "Na to power, na to point." Right? So hopefully we can be a little bit popular. Other people who said a picture is worth 1,000 words. So I have many pictures, but you will see them and then you won't see them. I will be happy to share the presentation with everybody who's out here, but I'm going to go through it, very, very quickly. This has already been done, so one start test. As of yesterday, Microsoft became the most valuable company in the world, and I understand Apple has taken reverse things perhaps. But Microsoft and Apple are worth approximately $3 trillion. They're within a few billion of each other. And then I've got Alphabet, Amazon, Meta, and I've got 2 companies highlighted out here. I want you to tell me which of these companies, the 7 that you see out here, I want you to tell me which of these companies are communications and media companies. The answer is pretty obvious. Saudi Aramco is obviously not a media company. And NVIDIA is making chips, but they're making chips actually that are especially appropriate for communications. So they got one for everything, if you will. But most people don't realize that a company like Alphabet, like Google, is 93% advertising revenue.
Yes.
Last month, Amazon overtook these companies in terms of growth rate on advertising spend on the Amazon platform. So these are communications companies, and it is particularly appropriate that we are sitting in a room for an institution that is focused on communication and marketing strategy. So this is very, very core to you guys. 5 out of the 7 top companies here are communication companies. They may happen to use technology for communication, but that's what they are. So with that, let me go to another very old picture. And this is Henry Ford saying you can have any color car you want as long as obviously what he was after was trying to minimize costs. Now you might wonder, why black? Why not some other color? So how many engineers in this room? All right, well, it's rare to see engineers in a minority. so to the engineers, to the three engineers in this room, why black and why not white? Blue. Blue. No, I'm giving you binary choice between black and white. Why not white? Looks like I'm going to have to answer my own question. Alright, let me change it around. How many people in this room from Uttar Pradesh? UP. Why do we wear white in the summers in UP? To reflect heat. Henry Ford wanted black to absorb heat because his invention was the assembly line. And the idea was to dip the whole car in paint, take it out, put it in the furnace, and you could save about 18 minutes for drying the car if it was black compared to white. White reflects the heat, black absorbs the heat. Right. Now, obviously what Mr. Ford was about was cost minimization. That was his game. If you can bring the cost down, you can bring the price down. When you can bring the price down, you take market share up. When you take market share up, you increase your scale. When you increase your scale, you bring your cost down. Virtuous cycle. That was about 110 years ago. So fast forward 110 years, and we're still using the logic that came out of manufacturing, which is saying that investment is property, plant, and equipment. Right? You take a fintech company, or you take we have FMCG companies. We have a representative from the government who manages telecom. The name of the game is customer acquisition and retention. So what accountants call SG&A, I call it an investment. If we look at the 20th century corporations, what did they invest in? Factories, building, etc. This is Henry Ford. If you look at today, what's the investment? The ideas, the brands. If you look at Bata versus Nike, how many of you wear Nike compared to Bata? About half the class. How many of you wear Bata? So, if I ask the same question about Apple, how many of you use an iPhone? You guys must have spare money.
And maybe MICA is paying you too much. So, what the world is today is about brands. It's about managing networks. It's managing information. It's managing human capital. We talk about financial capital, working capital. When we talk about what we need to win today, is we need the human capital. So why don't we invest in human capital and brands rather than property, plant, and equipment? Now here are some numbers that are going to shock you. These numbers are a bit old. At that time, Apple was 300 billion ahead of Microsoft. These numbers have changed. But you can see the value of Apple, Alphabet, Amazon, etc., which I had updated earlier for you. And then you look at General Motors. General Motors is 46 billion compared to Apple. So how many General Motors can Apple own? About 67? Yes. Or is it more than 67? Alright, so then we look at some others. You look at Goodyear Tire, worth 4 billion. You look at Apollo Tires out of India, worth 4 billion. You have General Motors at 46, Tata Motors 31 billion. I didn't forgot to put Maruti out here. Maruti 38 billion. So the world is very, very different. The Indian companies are global players. And if you look at 20th century giants, they are 21st century minutes. So whatever they were doing does not work anymore. So what I want to do is really focus on the trends. CapEx is going down. R&D and technology are going up. And what was called sales, general and administrative experiences, SG&A, has now become the new investment. So if Bharti or Reliance are acquiring customers and retaining customers, they're fighting for customers because it's the customers that contribute to the top line. So, if I now look at valuation, these are what I call market to book ratios. So if I look at Apple, it is 46 times the balance sheet. So about 2% of Apple is on the balance sheet. Microsoft 13 times. Let's put it outside the room so it doesn't. And when you look at Amazon, maybe 10% of Amazon. But this is not just a tech story. If you look at the National Stock Exchange, Nifty, the price to book ratio is 4.37 to 1. Meaning, more than 75% of Nifty is not on the balance sheet either. And for Singapore Stock Exchange, about ratio is almost 7 to 1. The only exchange that is a low number is the London Stock Exchange LSE. That's because of the problems in UK. So if 25% of the value is on the balance sheet, that's tangible. What is the remaining 75%? And that happens to be brands, customers, distribution networks, human capital, intellectual property. So if I ask the question, can Pepsi beat Coca-Cola globally? They can do whatever they want, but the answer is no. Why? Because Coca-Cola has a distribution network that Pepsi will never be able to do. Similarly, can Procter & Gamble take on Hindustan Unilever in India? The answer is no. So, it's important to redefine what do we mean by assets. And when I look at financial companies such as MasterCard, the ratio about 3 months ago was 39 to 1. Today it's 60 to 1. Meaning less than 2% of MasterCard is on the range. So, for my friends from finance and accounting who teach financial statement analysis, my apologies sir to your experience. Let us be careful in defining assets. The asset could be human capital, the asset could be the brand, the asset could be the distribution network. And then the value, this is the work I've been doing for the last 3 decades. The valuation happens to depend on the net present value of future cash flows. So it's not the money you made in the past, it's the money investors expect you to make in the future. And how resilient are you? Can you make money and can you continue to make money? So, and what is the role of industry and technology in that? But my most recent realization is the geography. What do I mean by that? Is you take companies like Adani here in town, the price to book ratio is 9 to 1. 11% of Adani is on the balance sheet. Shree Cement, 12% of Shree Cement is on the balance sheet. ITC, let's have a hand for ITC. ITC is now, I think it's gone up from 12 to 13.7 or something like that. So about 7% of ITC is on the balance sheet. Tata Consultancy, again similar number. But these are Indian companies and these are not necessarily tech companies. So about 3-4 months ago we published an article titled, "Do you have an India strategy?" What we did was compare Hindustan Unilever with Unilever. The valuation ratios for Hindustan Unilever were twice those of the parent company. We look at Sanofi India versus Sanofi France, Bosch India versus Bosch Germany, 3M India versus 3M the US. In each and every one of these categories, the price to book ratio for the Indian companies is significantly higher.
I mentioned Nestle as well.
Nestle is significant. Nestle price to book ratio is 80%. 1.25% of Nestle is on the balance sheet.
Nestle India.
Nestle India, not Nestle Global. So when we start looking at this, something must be going on in India. And what is going on in India is the growth story. So if the government is talking about 6% per year, and we expect 6% per year for the next 5 years, hands on please. How many are confident that we can make 6%? This is very pessimistic. How many are confident we can make 7%? Thank you. 7% a year for 5 years, compounded, is about 45% growth. Now, is Germany going to grow it by 45% in the next 5 years? Will the United Kingdom grow by 45%? Will the United States grow by 45%? The answer is no. So what we have come to the conclusion is that part of the valuation of ITC, of Shree Cement and so on, is really the India story, that we happen to be in the right place at the right time. And a company that is not investing in India is, in our opinion, making a mistake. Moving forward, about 20 years ago, I started a conference called Marketing Strategy Meets Wall Street. We've run it globally, started in Atlanta, took it to Boston, took it to Frankfurt, took it to Singapore, took it to San Jose, Paris. It was supposed to come to Hyderabad, but we had the damn pandemic, so we took it to Chicago instead. What are we doing? We're really focusing, this is about 400 odd people now. And I have some colleagues here in this room who are doing some work in this area. What we need to do is change the mindset to making money in the future, be aggressive about it. In order to do that, it's not going to be by assembling iPhones in India. That's the lowest value added activity we can do, assembling. What we need to do is design in India, we need to brand India, we need to come up with customer solutions, and we need to fight on value creation and perceptions and aspiration of customers and the lowest price. We must fresh technology destroy. So create helps us. The third thing we must do is look at valuation. How do we drive valuation? And this is where the brand story, etc. starts coming in. So we need to move away from this basic economics thinking. Everybody knows a downward sloping demand curve. And everybody knows margin and turnover. Let's throw that out. What we need to understand is the role of strategy is to make markets imperfect. Don't tell that to the Indian Competition Commission. But that is what marketing strategy is supposed to be doing. And when you are able to do that, you are decommoditizing the market. And that decommoditization means that we are creating value through differentiation and we are appropriating value through things like branding. If I look at these companies, look at the logos, do I need to tell you which companies these are? Not really. And it's not about price competition. What Nike is charging 4,000 for, Tata is charging 1,400. Very similar construction costs. Same thing with many products that we make. There are a couple of companies like Tata that have built a global brand. And what I'm arguing is that each one of us, each of the companies in India, should be thinking of how do we compete globally. And I can guarantee you it's not by crowd. that hospitalization. To give you a picture of how it can be done, when I was growing up and my two older brothers were getting married, we went to Chalk. Why? Because we needed to buy jewelry for my bhabis. So we went to the same store that my grandmother had gone to and my great-grandmother had gone to. Why? Because it was all about trust. If you wanted to return the thing, or if you were concerned it was there, I thought it was 22 carats and it's only 14, you could return it. So what does Tanish do? They come in and they say, we're going to give you a certificate of authentication. And if you buy it in Lucknow and want to return it in Mumbai, it's okay. But just bring that certificate of ownership with you. And we'll charge you a small fee for putting it back into stock, and you can be off and running. So what they took was a uniquely local market and made it pan-India, and now it is a global market. They've also, expanding globally, and they've gone into all kinds of things, tightness. So if you look at the value of this business, it's $38 billion. MICA, faculty and MICA students are working in an industry. The industry is communication. And we need to learn how to appropriate this value. We need to be able to tell the Titan story. In 1998, I published a paper. But the work goes back to probably a decade earlier. I just didn't publish it till 1998. And what we argued in that paper is market development is an investment. The particular paper has probably been cited about 3,000 times, and a couple of other related papers have led to a collection that is now over about 30,000 citations. This idea that marketing and branding, etc., is an investment. The argument was these activities help you make more money because of the pricing power, faster adoption so you can make money quicker, customer retention so the money doesn't go away, and then we are making investments in intangible assets. So this was one thing, all kinds of awards. So what I'm arguing is you create value for customers, but this particular paper does not really delve into how are we going to create value. It does talk about how we're going to appropriate value for the investors. So how do we create value for customers? Henry Ford will make it cheap. Pharma companies, and today Indigo has a similar practice, same model. Then you have companies like Pfizer saying you get patents and you can charge a higher premium. And then you have the branding companies. If you remember, this is what Michael Porter said 50 years ago. So this whole thing about who are the customers, what do they want, and how do we get it to them, is the value disciplines and core competence. Now, Michael Porter and these other consultants, you see John Hagel, etc., they were saying, pick one out of the three. The work that I've done basically says you have to do three of the three. If you look at the companies that are dominating, that I showed you earlier, and this chart is 15, 20 years old, this is not a new chart. What this is saying, you have to be ambidextrous. And we're moving from vertical integration to managing networks of strategic partners and so on. The best exemplar I have for a company that knows how to manage strategic partners is Microsoft. And that is why I was particularly delighted about yesterday. Because Apple has proved me wrong for 7 years in a row. Right? So what do they do? I brought up this phrase called market-based assets. Assets like customers, meaning distributors, consumers, application
in those days we called them ISVs, independent software vendors. Today we call them apps. All of these things contribute to the strength of Microsoft. These are then channeled through Outlook and Office, and Microsoft cross-sells the hell out of it. There's a very nice paper titled The Strength of Weak Ties. Think of a rope. The strands are individually very weak, but the rope is strong. It is very hard. Just imagine you come into work tomorrow and the IT department has replaced Outlook with Unix. You turn on the computer says to you, "Welcome to Unix. Please enter your next command." I'm sure I can see happiness written over it. So the customer retention rate at Microsoft is 99%, with the remaining 1% resting in peace. Now what does it do? I'm fond of a product called OneDrive. Why? I've got a PC that travels with me. I got 2 phones that travel with me, US, India. I have an office computer in my home office in Austin, and I have an office computer in my office in ISB, and I have a home apartment computer in my home office in my apartment at ISB. What OneDrive does, if I make a change on my handphone, it will automatically synchronize everything else. I cannot live without OneDrive. Microsoft brought Teams. They were not the innovator was Zoom. Our Teams has done a good job of catching up with the help of strategic partners such as Accenture. Microsoft Azure. AWS was the leader, but because of B2B customers, Microsoft now has a 27% market share, and AWS is down from 18 to about 40. So, again, my apologies to my finance colleague. Customers and brands are the only assets that depreciate. They do not depreciate, I'm sorry. We need to look at the value of networks, brand expanding into related markets, being able to leverage your customer networks. And Microsoft has done a great job of acquiring technologies and putting them under umbrella brand. And this is what makes this company very hard to replace. What they've been able to do is expand into adjacent markets and keep expanding the share of the companies that they've acquired, whether it's LinkedIn, ChatGPT, etc. So you'll just see a big change. So what I'm arguing is, now if you take business processes and you combine them with value appropriation, and we did this thing about 25 years ago. We talked to maybe 75 companies. I personally did for about 50 of the interviews. My colleagues did the remaining 25, 30. And when we talked to Intel, they said, look, we do R&D to stay ahead of the competition so we can charge it. AMD copies us, then we have to bring our price down. Talk to this company called Gillette, we think of as a consumer goods company. They were very proud to be a material science company. That they could make steel alloys that made their blades last longer. How many of us use Gillette? I'm wondering whether the usage rate would have been higher if Virat Kohli wasn't around. I think there are too many people growing beard. So that's Gillette. They built a brand on the fact it's lasting longer. And they have about an 80% price premium and an 80% market share. AMD, Dell, efficiency, Henry Ford. Pfizer, no different from Intel in terms of their corporate DNA. Intel, OnStar, investing in R&D. OnStar was a GPS company 20 years ago. Texas Instruments, how can we accelerate the market? Tesla doing the same thing today. If you look at Southwest Airlines, managing efficiency and customer engagement. And you have Singapore Airlines focusing on their brand and customer retention. Now, if you look at a company like Singapore Airlines or Southwest, and if they're able to retain their customer, are they reducing corporate risk? The answer is hell yes. The biggest risk you have is losing your customer. But we marketing people have not trained ourselves to argue that will reduce risk for the company. When you take a few more, you got Coca-Cola and Porsche building the brand. You got Zara managing the supply chain and branding. And we have companies like Charles Schwab leveraging technology to better serve customers. And Microsoft saying try it for free but pay forever, investing in customers. Now, what we discovered as we looked at it in a distort is that different companies are looking at different ways to create customer value, which is the core key. You create customer value through a more effective supply chain. You create customer value by customers feeling wonderful that they have the Apple phone. And you create value through innovation and technology. How you appropriate value and the investments you have to make is the roles. So I wrote with my colleagues a much better paper that did not win as many awards. And that's because academics don't know how to judge quality. What we did was we showed that if you want to enhance cash flows, you can do it through product innovation, you can do it through efficiency, and you can do it through branding, so the price premium. So we said, look, differentiation in pricing power will help us make money today. On the other hand, if you want to speed up, accelerate the market, and reduce the time to money, you can develop products faster, you can move them through your supply chain faster, reduce time to volume, or you can reduce the time to customer adoption. So this is where customer acquisition and retention comes in. You can reduce risk through also a variety of mechanisms. And indeed, customer loyalty is a way of reducing risk. And then finally, when you look at customer acquisition or human capital, these are ways also to make investments for the future. Now, as we look to the future, what does India have? We're bringing in infotech, we're bringing in semiconductor design. These are areas that we actually lead in to some extent. Automotive design in Pune, Gurgaon, Chennai, fintech. You know, when you look at PayPal compared to YONO from SBI is a joke. R&D, vaccines, we can go on and on. So the point that I'm really making is that we have to drive the future. And one of my junior colleagues, named is Francis Kim, a Korean professor who's now teaching in Malaysia, he has coined the term backcasting. We have forecasting, we have backcasting. What is backcasting? You imagine the future, and then you say, what do I need to do to get there? Other people will call it purpose. And so I'm sorry I lied. I took 30 minutes, closer to 30 minutes than 25. But I want to thank you, and I want to turn it over. I want to turn it over to my colleagues. And let us start with we'll go from left to right, or we do, and I will move myself here. You all have presentations also, right? You did? Okay. So if you need a presentation, we got the IT person somewhere to help us. And so maybe we start with you, sir. I've made a lot of statements out there. And yeah, you come from the telecom sector. things apply at all to the telecom industry in India. And to these concepts actually help us lead to the front when it comes to our competitive ability.
So, whatever you have told about retaining of the customer retaining and communication, so that is most important in telecom sector also. So, the companies which are able to retain the customers and they are providing the core competency also in providing the services. So, they are having more number of customers and effectively two operators, Reliance Jio and Airtel, they are able to retain their customers and maximum number of customers are with them, and this gives them the network effect, the kind of platform which they are creating. Okay. So the network effect they are getting by retaining so many customers and the platform effect which they are getting. So that is giving them a value creation, and with the same platform they are providing other value-added services also to the customers. So it gives them the opportunity to enhance their businesses and expand the business through a horizontal integration also. Besides telecom, they are now going into the broadcasting segment, that is the content distribution through the same telecom network using broadband and all. So those broadband customers, they are leveraging the technology to provide them with the content. So that way it is benefiting both of them. And the second thing is that even other than the sectors which are not telecom sector, the use of ICT technology now is going to transform the businesses and the business processes everywhere. So basically the companies, they have to now see wherever there is an interface or wherever there is an interaction, everything now it is to be based on ICT technology. It has to be automated. So the automation, whether it is a factory or manufacturing, so the industry 4.0 or other use cases, so everything is now leveraging towards the technology, and that gives the efficiency in doing the work, the productivity gets enhanced, and you can have a better retention of the customers and other things which you will get benefit through the use of ICT technology.
So it's kind of key that you've got technology, and technology is helping in customer acquisition and retention. It's then creating the revenues. So to some extent technology is an asset, but at the same time customers also have assets that enables better use of the technology. Now one more question before we move on. So what can the telecom sector of the government, what can other sectors, other regulatory bodies in the Indian government learn? What can telco teach the rest of the government?
So the regulation, basically in the telecom sector, we have gone for the less and less regulation. The motto was that you create regulation in such a way that there is no need of regulation in future. And most of the things have been kept under forbearance in telecom sector, particularly the tariff also, and that is why the tariff is one of the lowest in the world what we are getting in India to the price of the data and all. And that is why we are simply enjoying the video streaming and all because the cost is coming down. So the sector is basically earning on the economy of scale, and it is going very, very fast, and more things it is being added. Similarly, the financial regulator also have taken the steps and in the right direction, that whenever there is an interface or interaction, it was very difficult earlier, but with the UPI, the kind of ease and kind of things which the technology has now made possible. So that way the regulator has to move in the direction in which the sector grows on the use of technology and create an ease for the customers so that the customer will get the real benefit. Then the adoption will be the faster of any technology.
Thank you. I understand we're going to take this session and convert it into some sort of a paper. Make sure this point about deregulation is really emphasized on that. So over to you, sir, the communications industry.
See, I went media and entertainment and of course communications. See, I give some peculiarities of Indian market that I don't agree with, but I watch the biggest media companies. They have one major problem. First major problem is format market. They think they are in newspaper business, they are in radio business, they are in television. They are not in news business. And there are 410 channels, so no one is charging any money, all free of cost. So your whole dependence is on the media. We moved on the government.
What's it? What's it?
Awesome. Yeah. So first is that they focus too much on the supply side of the business automatically because you are not charging your subscribers. I'm talking about, for example, the legacy medium, and come later to the digital medium. So that's the first problem. So as a result, the whole burden of monetization or making money goes to the, depends on the advertising. Now in the advertising front, because of the technology change and various other things, there is a huge inter-category migration of attention, which has led to inter-category migration of cash. The budget has not gone up for the advertisers, so they are getting redistributed. So print, when I joined this industry some 1,000 years back, so that time it was 80% of the advertising spend. Today it's around somewhere around 5-6%. So you can imagine how things have dramatically shifted. Second comes the, so no one is doing the same thing with the GECs, general entertainment channels, which controls 46% of the revenue of the whole television market. They are fighting with each other. So we think always vertically and not horizontally, which you talked about. So there is no question of interdependency or joint dependency. There is more, I would say, internecine warfare to outdo the other person. At least for GECs, the ratio of subscription to advertising is around 65-35. In case of print, it's somewhere around, in regional print 80-20, and in case of English is 90-10. 90 is advertising. Now how would you operate? So, and as a result, everyone says Indian market is price sensitive, they don't want to pay. And instead of investing in editorial or content or a omni-channel experience, these are, if you obviously know it, New York Times was on the verge of getting sold in 2014. BuzzFeed wanted to buy it. Sulzberger objected to it. He said, no, I won't sell. He just reframed the whole business they are in. Said that we are in news business and not in newspaper business. Since then, what has happened today, they have become so big, they have become a behemoth now. At least overtaking 25 newspaper companies, consolidated revenue, theirs is more than that. Because they are everywhere, podcast, digital, whatever you call it. In India, no one invests, they have got digital investment of course, but obviously you are a 5% player. So even if you say higher base, the 5% is not giving them enough resource to hire talent. And no one is making money, so you are controlling cost. So print is following its print. Now within intra-category, there is a huge bloodbath going on. So Times of India will not collaborate with another newspaper, and so on and so forth. Same thing with channels. Now between Viacom, the Viacom and Jio. The Viacom, of course, Jio, Viacom and Star, they have taken now merger, waiting for approval. Now Zee Sony merger, which is getting delayed, and they are fighting their own internal problem, and it may not happen. So it's going to a huge monopoly situation, and it is confined to only 2 big houses. Same thing with OTT, 35 OTT platforms, but people only invest in 4. No one makes money. Third important problem is no data. Third-party data is in chaotic state. Whatever little bit bark is there, there is a controversy, and no one believes. Advertisers know it, you know it very well. Newspaper has no data, radio has no data, and you are talking about data is the new oil. I say, what oil? There is no oil at all. And so there is no proper performance evaluation. Are they investing in software? As you mentioned, yes, branding, yes, but they are not heterogeneously homogeneous. Everyone is claiming the same. Like today, you open any news channel, everyone is singing about Ram Bhajan. There is no problem. I'm just trying to say that. So there is no divergence in terms of positioning or other things. Everyone is shouting. So news channels are gone. So now television channels. You are still playing with Nagin and this and that. You look at OTT is really advanced. Nagin is the largest viewing show. I don't imagine who sees it, but anyway. That's it. Huh? Yeah, I know, I can imagine. So India is peculiar. So everyone is. Now, point is, I can't believe. You see, New York Wall Street Journal is around $2.5, if not more. My last data. In India, no one wants to pay more than 5 rupees for a newspaper. 5 rupees doesn't cover your direct variable cost. If you charge 15 rupees for producing a 16-page paper, you are profitable. So they call it SVOD and AVOD. So independence is on advertising, which is AVOD, and SVOD is not there. So your whole concept of investing in the software element of the business is not there. As a result, it is controlled only by a top few. So there are 3,000 newspapers, but only 10%, not in that, sorry, top 10 newspaper organizations control 90% of the profit. Because others don't. This is basically you're controlled by the habit, and second is of course the passive medium and active audience. Television, only 4 channels make huge money. There are 410 news channels, everyone loses money. But you have an ego issue, so you have a steel plant, you have also a news channel. अच्छा लगता है. I've got control of lobbying with the ministers. So our industry is peculiar in that way, but I fully agree with you that what you mentioned, if they understand and collaborate. Today collaboration is not there, which is the problem, and data is not there, as a result performance cannot be measured. So media companies' market caps are the lowest. Is this situation? Especially newspapers, television little bit, G is made, little bit here, but Z is downside. So that's a big challenge in terms of measuring P ratios of companies that are in business. They're actually watched in Indian context. Just initial comments.
Thank you. So we see that the media business is kind of fragmented. At one end, I put 5 out of 7 companies as being, and I call them communication companies, which they are. At the other end, we see fractionation and non-use of technology, and not having the vision as to what are the real assets. So obviously, leadership and vision have an important role to play in terms of how we proceed. And so let me hand over to ITC, and they've done a great job of bubbling to the top of the food business, of the FMCG business. So tell us what you're doing and whether the principles that we talked about work for ITC.
Good afternoon, everyone. Well, I think a lot of commonalities in terms of what we just saw, especially in your slides. Yes, the mood is buoyant in ITC, especially the foods business, has had a journey. It was launched in 2003. Of course, the personal care business was launched a little earlier in the 90s, but the foods business was launched in 2003 with an entry in a category which was otherwise, which is still, 59% is unbranded and unorganized, which is Atta, right? The brand called Ashirvad Atta was launched back then. And then I think the organization grew from strength to strength, and I'll come to what are the enablers and how it kind of evolved over a period of time, right? So the focus of the organization is, if you call ITC, especially the FMCG division or the foods division where I'm based in, which is Bangalore. If you call us a legacy company, I think people get offended. We call ourselves a 20-year-old funded startup of sorts, with several enablers. If you think about the journey of IDC, it is actually hinging on certain power brands and the relevant extensions of the same, right? So, if you think about Ashirvad entered in the most base level popular atta category, which is the staple of a large part of this country. And then if you see the evolution of the brand, which pretty much kind of reflects the story that you were relating to, which is that there are two enablers to becoming, contemporary. Now we call it digital first brands because the consumer is digital first. They experience or imagine their brand worlds on the 6-inch screen in most cases, right? So typically the two levers that have become the enablers of most of our brand building strategies is in some manner breaking data silos. There is data which is legacy data. If you think about it, distribution, there is a lot of consumer insight based work, there is a lot of category data which is lying around and which is layered with a lot of new age data which is emerging, which is consumer acquisition data, which is commerce related data, which is new and emerging channel based data, right? So that's one part of the story, which is how do we really break data silos. And the second enabler is technology. So technology, it will eventually play a role in several parts of the value chain, because if you think about Industry 4.0 as you referred to, or smart manufacturing as we call it, or even thinking about the entire supply chain piece, which is truly enabled by the role of technology. ITC has been a front runner. If you remember, the ITC e-Chopal used to be a big story, which has now become ITC Mart, which is again a platform which kind of is a congregation of this farmer, which essentially is what powers our raw material, so to speak. And then, of course, business models which have been powered by technology. So I don't know if you guys wouldn't have experienced it. It is still in a test market kind of a stage. It is in 2 markets currently. It's called Ashirvad's extension, which is technologically enabled. It's personalized atta. It's trying to mimic the chakki behavior of the audience online. It is in Bangalore, it's called Nama Chakki. In Delhi, it's called Meri Chakki. It enables you to really create your own customized version of atta. You can mix various things, you can mix a sattu in it, you can make it high protein, you can choose the milling quality, you can do many things. And it is purely enabled by technology, and it is a direct to consumer business model, which means that you have data and analytics on one side and you have technology enablement on another side, which is making this brand, which was otherwise really catering to a certain demography of the Indian consumer base, and made it relevant to the evolving digital first consumer base as well.
Well, I can tell you, nobody in the world is doing what you do.
Yes, so these are things which actually kind of bring together multiple pieces of the technology and data and analytics piece that you spoke about, and then what it then does is it kind of enables you to, or gives you levers to grow both organically and inorganically. So if you look at the acquisition strategy of the brands that we kind of really invest in, so whether it's Yoga Bar or whether it's Mother Sparsh or whether it's Milo, these are brands that ITC has invested in. It's either bringing in data and analytics, or it is bringing in some kind of a technological prowess into the ITC ecosystem, which kind of really ups the ante when it comes to really how we function or strategize within the ITC ecosystem. Similar is the case with the other mega brands that we have. We have a mega brand called Bingo, which is a large snack brand. Look at the extensions that it has really come up with. Look at the delivery mechanism of how the brand has actually kind of really evolved itself into multiple need states. And the third mega brand is Sunfeast, which is the cookie brand with very, very innovative formats, like the choco-filled cookie, which is the Sunfeast Dark Fantasy, is the first to market format, which is now, of course, replicated by multiple partners. But in terms of how it delivers itself, again, to whether it's a personalized cookie, we have seen it years ago in the US by Oreo, perhaps they would have made some personalized cookies and stuff like that back then. But now the delivery mechanism is tech-enabled. So I think, like I said, how do you build a house of scalable brands which are ever evolving and which also makes us consumer centric. And when I say consumer centric, which means that an organization which would take pride in their distribution strength suddenly realize that okay, distribution strength may not be relevant going forward because here's e-commerce which is all pervasive, here's quick commerce which might really change the game, and if unit economics really work out, it will really find scale not just in metros but even in 10 lakh plus and 5 lakh plus cities as well. So I think the focus in bringing the entire ITC store story, which kind of complements the entire e-commerce strategy of ITC. I think ITC has done exceptionally well in e-commerce. We've beaten our competition also in the e-commerce strategies that we've had. Consistently thinking about how do you really have a supplementary complementary role which is enabled by technology and backed by data analytics has been pretty much the consistent story that I have seen in the last 7 years of my tenure at ITC. So I think that's where we've been. But yes, it's probably, like I always say, we've not even scratched the surface. We are at this juncture where the consumer is really drastically changing, business models are really drastically changing, and hence brands are just finding their feet in how do they kind of condense these evolving trends into business models which are profitable. Channel-wise profitable, because I think that's the motto that we at ITC follow, that if you don't find channel-wise profitability, abort. Find something new to do so that you can make money there. So I think that's the larger theme that I see when it comes to building brands at ITC.
So before I come to finance and operations and products, this is a question that just came to me and noticed. ITC has learned what to do in terms of, combining information, managing brand, looking at the supply chain. And if you were to export that knowledge and insight, I'll give you a choice of 2 countries. Would you take it to Indonesia or would you take it to the United States?
Well, Indonesia would be fairly similar in terms of dynamics. If you look at the route to market, if you look at the channels that kind of work, I think it will be easy replication. So if it was phase 1, phase 2, I would probably, maybe the scale would also be fairly large in Indonesia. So phase 1 would be win in Indonesia. Just like ITC actually does this, that you select a couple of really good markets, like in our case it's always Bangalore and Delhi, or you win in that, really win and learn on the business models and really get your unit economics right and scale it up. So I think Indonesia first and then of course US.
So thank you again, whoever is going to come up with the draft of this session. I'm a very strong advocate that India needs to expand into the global south, as they call it. We can make more of a contribution, Kenya, Indonesia, Malaysia, etc. So let's not get too enamored. I'm probably not credible, having spent about 50 years in the US, but over to you, sir. Let's get a financial perspective.
So I think, whatever is mentioned in this presentation or whatever we discussed over last 30-40 minutes, all of them are very, very relevant for a manufacturing organization, especially, when I'm coming from a specialty chemical company, the investment to the valuation are extremely high. It's not high because we put more money in fixed asset. It's high because we spend more money on R&D. So solving the problem of a customer, giving a product which is completely different or creating something new out of it is very, very relevant. From a finance perspective, we usually say that the PSPD, this is a model which we use to generally say that what is the value of a company or try to understand. So PSPD stands for profitability, sustainability, risk and predictability. These are the 4, generally the levers that we see. If any company is having, these parameters and they are high on these parameters, we generally feel that the valuation of this company should be high. To bring those things in line, profitability, there is sustainable growth and predictable in your order book or the future. I think you need to have a very strong customer satisfaction in place. Your product needs to be speaking what you are doing. In manufacturing, you don't see too much of a communication thing happening. You don't see a lot of manufacturing companies having their advertisements or anything on the media or anywhere. But the only way they can really grow, increase their revenue profitability by giving extraordinary product, extraordinary customer service. So these are the two things on which we have to focus. These are very relevant stuffs as long as the manufacturing is concerned. Especially in a specialty chemical companies, because we do something which is exceptionally different. The investments are not high, but the application of the products are very, very important. At times, it takes care of the protection of the human body, takes care, used in a certain very difficult environments, very high, very low temperature environments, and all. So, the performance of the product becomes very, very important. Quality, how we, handle the customers, how we, do entire R&D expenditure, everything becomes very important. So you mentioned that, that G&A or whatever the spend we do on R&D is not an expense, it's actually an investment, and I definitely agree with you on that. I come from a company where, the total asset block from is not more than 200 crores. We are valued more than 3,000 crores. So, it's a 10 times or more of the gross block is not even more than 100 crores. So, obviously, I definitely agree with you that, going forward, the companies will win when they become more technologically advanced. They will look at customers from very different perspective. It should be an outside in view rather than inside out view. We'll have to solve the problems of a customer. If we solve the problem of a customer, I think valuation, profitability, growth, everything will automatically follow. This is actually my view.
Thank you. I'm one of the few marketing people who's actually done more work with B2B than with B2C. Marketing people get blamed for being work only with consumer brands and so on. And some of the brands I've worked with, DuPont brands, Dow Chemical, Dow Corning. And so when you take a brand like Lycra, which used to be a DuPont brand, it actually helps the direct customer make money. Because if you can sell a pair of Lycra slacks or whatever for 80% more, it's an ingredient brand. So there's potential for ingredient branding, when it comes to the manufacturing kind of sector. And I'll be delighted to share. I've got so much stuff on the chemical industry. I'll give it to you. All right. So now, we're running late. We started late, by the way. So the five of us will not take the entire day. And we started at 3 o'clock until 2:30. But I suspect the organizers will be delighted if we don't finish half an hour late. So we'll give 15 minutes back to MICA. So we'll restrict the questions to about 15 minutes from the audience. And all the difficult questions, the four of them are going to answer. Anything easy, I will do. And if you have a question, then you can point out whom you, if you can say your name and whom you ask.
Yeah, so my question is for you.
It's an easy question.
It's an easy one. So your entire presentation revolved around this, getting the intangibles in so that, the market value and the book value gap closes. My fundamental question is, both serve a purpose, the book value and the market value. Why would you want the entire value of a company to be on the balance sheet? What's the problem with the divergence?
I don't see a problem. The problem is boards don't understand it. The Ministry for Corporate Affairs doesn't understand it. And we are using this 1 century old, more than 1 century old thing that is relying on the DuPont model, on margins and turnover and return on investment, return on asset, return on equity, return on invested capital. I'm just really tired of that. We're measuring the wrong variable.
But most cash flows do capture the intangible assets that you were talking about, and that's precisely the space.
I'm saying we need to look at future cash flows, not past.
Future cash flows backed by intangible assets, and that's precisely the place where investors make money. So let it be.
No. I've had people from Microsoft tell me that we're quite happy if the industry doesn't understand. About 3-4 weeks ago, I spoke at the CII Cost Congress. What is the Cost Congress? It's for the CFOs. And what were they talking about? Why the hell do you call it cost? As a CFO, you should be the chief future officer, not the chief cost control officer. Okay, so I really think we should focus on things that help us create the value, because if we don't understand what is helping us create the value, I can guarantee you we will under-invest. And the DuPont model has single-handedly, in my opinion, destroyed companies. Why? Because we try to reinforce the past as opposed to look at the future.
Yeah, but your spreadsheet could capture cash flows coming
If you redefine the assets, I'm happy.
Yeah. Not in the books, but in the Excel sheet, yes.
Okay. Don't tell the real truth. All right. I get your point. Let's make sure that the competition doesn't understand why we are running. Let them be confused.
But sir, when the company didn't understand, but when there is any kind of mergers and acquisitions that happen, the valuation will go down. I mean, then somebody will
No. Procter & Gamble paid $55 billion for Gillette.
True. So therefore, they based on the Excel sheet. Somewhere at some point of time, they reveal your Excel sheet. Because when the Samne wala is sitting.
No. Let me. So Procter & Gamble paid $55 billion for Gillette. How much do you think Coca-Cola paid for Parley?
That was long back.
Long time ago, it was like $250 million. Whoever was the accounting company, the valuation company that was providing advice to Parley should be lined up. I shouldn't say these things. They basically did not do that. So if you don't understand what is creating value, then how the hell are you going to decide in the merger and acquisition what is the price that's worth paying? And what I'm saying is Coca-Cola made out like a bandit in the acquisition of Parley. Yeah, you're in charge now. We are at your mercy.
So I have two questions. My first question is, does value also depreciate? Like whatever we are talking, we have to create value. But in the test of time, with the challenges we face, does the company value also depreciate if we are talking in those terms?
Can we do one question at a time?
Yeah, sure.
Let me answer this one because I've seen a lot of value destruction. The value, if you look at business, it's done on faith. You guys are into branding. Where does the word brand come from? It is from to burn. It's the Latin for burn that led to branding. Right? Now, branding, it was livestock. I thought in the good old wild west, it was, if you stole somebody's horse, you got strung up on the tree. But the branding was done if I sold 100 head of cattle and 5 of them keeled over within the next month. The buyer would come to me and say, Raj, you got to make good. So it was always about trust. When I talked about tarnish, was about trust. The moment you destroy trust, you've destroyed value and you've destroyed the brand. I'll give you an example of a company that vanished overnight. And along with it, they took some other companies with them. You've heard about Enron? You've heard about Arthur Andersen? Arthur Andersen was the accounting company. They're the ones who certified that these guys are telling the truth. So in today's world, when we're talking about networks, our value depends on the company that we keep. Okay, so if the three of us are in a network doing something for you, if he screws up, I'm dead too. Destruction of value is destruction of trust.
Good afternoon, sir. This is a two-part question. The first part is for you. We've spoken a lot about...
Can we start with the second part?
The second part is actually for ma'am. So essentially, we've spoken a lot about intangible assets. How important do you think are the employees? Are they an intangible asset? Because a lot of the tech enablement and use to drive innovation across a lot of these companies is being carried out by a lot of tech talent. So it's one to understand how important that is, and secondly, since we've spoken about ITC, how is a daily marketer's job affected, since ITC is using a lot of customer data and they have something called a sixth center to segment customers probably. Yeah. So how is that affecting a daily marketer's job? These are the two questions.
So I think the employees are an extension of the entire value entity called the brand, right? So I mean, you can't really dissociate. I know they are fungible, from a skill set perspective, but they are very much a part of the organizational brand, so to speak. So I think that you cannot really discount. That's a very important or an integral part of growing a wholesome brand, so to speak. To your second question, in terms of technology, I think what's happened in most FMCG company, and that's not just true for ITC, is the fact that the nuanced consumer journey has translated itself in the plethora of skill sets that you need to really nurture within the marketing ecosystem. So, earlier you just had a brand manager and on the other side a key account manager, somebody who's like a marketing finance person, and some such, traditional roles. Now there is, of course, a digital business manager, there is a content manager, there is a performance marketing person, there is a data manager. So I think, and the marketing team has extended in two ways. One way is it's gone digital words from a media and marketing perspective. The other way, it's extended itself to IT and technology. So you have a CX skill set or the consumer experience skill set that has emerged. Then you have these data analytics skill sets that have emerged. For example, tomorrow a brand wants to get up and say that I want a plug and play approach of creating smart segments based on my use cases and I want to deploy it on media. So imagine the rigor or the skill set of those modelers and a lot of FMCG, if you guys are studying market mix modeling today, it's become more dynamic. So imagine all of those skill sets are becoming a part of the brand marketing organization, so to speak. And of course, there is an interplay between external partners or agencies and internal skill sets. But that ecosystem, what used to be a creative agency, a media agency, and a brand manager, has multiplied many-fold. So I think the life of the brand manager or the marketing manager, the KPIs they chase, has become a lot more expanded, and many people are tagging team to kind of bring that alive.
Thank you so much, Professor Srivastav and our esteemed panelists, for an engaging and insightful discussion. Do we have one? Okay, we have one last question.
Thank you. First of all, thank you so much to all the panelists for the wonderful discussion.
My question is related to the ongoing crisis and the discussion which we get to see almost on all international forums, which is on the sustainability. And when we look at the couple of the initial slides of Raj, which was talking about that iceberg, which has 25% of the tangible and 75% of the intangible. And if you look at the promises to the sustainability and commitment towards the sustainability of any firm, I think we get to see some paradox there. Like in terms that if we get to see the underwater iceberg, where we see that we claim that we do it, where half of the time it is maybe the greenwashing or the blue washing. But when we get to see the tangibles, the customers who are actually asking, for the green products, they are investing into the companies, those who are higher on those 25%. So how come this dilemma can be actually taken care by the companies where the value creation and appropriation, when we are creating the value but it is not being appropriately communicated to the stakeholders, not just the consumers but as a whole to the stakeholders. So getting out of it, adding to what, from the telecom sector we were coming up with the regulations. So recently I had a discussion with ITC CEO Sanjeev Puri, and we were talking about that this sustainability aspect in any organization is actually coming because of the regulations. So more it comes from the government compliances, the more companies will do it. But how come, like you were saying, that the practices become so intense that there is no room for the regulation, or it just reduces down. So this is where my question, or just some insights on it, would like to have from you.
So we have a hard stop. This conversation can go offline, and you can corner us. I'll just give you a one-time answer. This is not a decision for business. This is a decision for the government. The government needs to come up with regulations that protect the environment. ITC is not going to say, let me kill my profits so Hindustan Unilever can benefit. All right? So this is a decision that the government needs to do, and just throwing it over the wall and saying you come up with your report on the environment isn't going to do it. So we really need to take this one, because we can't answer this question till the cows come home tonight, tomorrow night, and the night after that. So again, on behalf of the panel, thank you so much.
As we come to the end of this session, I would like to take a moment to recognize each one of our distinguished speakers and our moderator. First, I would like to invite on the stage Professor Geeta Hegde to felicitate Professor Rajendra Srivastava.
We will save time. Thank you.
Next, I would like to invite Professor Shubhrat Sarangi to felicitate Mr. Syed Tawfiq Abbas. I would now like to invite Professor Anita Basalingappa to felicitate Dr. Bhaskar Das. I would also like to invite Professor Mini Mathur to felicitate Ms. Anushi Ghosh. And finally, I'd like to invite Professor Shefali Gupta to felicitate Mr. Kaushal Shah. Let's express our appreciation for our moderator and our panelists with a huge round of applause, please. Finally, I'd also like to thank the audience and team ICMC for making this session a success. We would now break for 8, after which we would have a valedictorian ceremony.
It's in auditorium. Please.